Hi, welcome to another edition of Astro Talks. Today we're going to be talking about and learning about Chiron. And I'm here with astrologer Lucia Rabello and Andrea Rickett from Astro Joy, and I'm Nicole Donnelly. So Lucia, please tell us about Chiron. I do not know much about it.
Me neither.
Chiron is it's not a planet, but a very important asteroid. It was discovered in 1977, and it's been named after the centaur Chiron in Greek mythology. And it's a very important asteroid because it is the one that needs to be healed. Chiron is the wounded healer. So, and it's interesting that its symbol in a natal chart is of a key, old school looking key, because it really has the key to unlock your wounds once you have the awareness to it. Once you have the awareness to start like, okay, digging into it. Because sometimes, when we're pressing on a wound, we just like want to numb it. That way we're not like really tending to it. But if we really pay attention to the wound and work towards healing it, then we can heal so many other things. That's why it's the wounded healer, or it's that old phrase that says, healer, heal yourself.
Yeah.
So since it was only discovered in 77, is it sort of like considered like a newer version of astrology, or do some people not really look at it, or like how does that work when they discover something new?
It's a really good question because some astrologers don't work with it, but I think everything leads back to it. When you follow your chart and you put everything together and you start connecting the dots, everything leads back to Chiron. And why? Because we gotta look at the element of Chiron, where the sign is in, the house, the mode. Also, the modes are very important. The modes are fixed, cardinal, mutable. Cardinal, fire starter, you initiate. Fixed, you literally, fixed energy stays there. And mutable, very adaptable, flexible, changing.
Okay. So how do we find this out? What it's mutable, not fixed?
It's in your chart. So if the astro.com has a box at the bottom, on the bottom right, that says C, F, M, C for cardinal, F for fixed, and M for mutable. And then that's, if you count how many planets, counting in the sun and the moon, we don't count the asteroids, we don't count, just gonna like see the flavor, how many planets you have in a given mode. Then that tells you, like, if you have a lot of cardinal energy, you have no problem starting thing. But if you don't have enough fixed energy, then you're going to have issues sustaining that. You may start things, but then you may give up easily because you don't have the structure, the stamina to continue doing them. Whereas if you have a lot of fixed signs in your chart, you have trouble, being flexible, and you're just too set in your own way. And if you have too much mutable energy, you're just too changeable, flexible, easily influenced. And in a good way, it's good because you're adaptable, you adapt to circumstances, but you can get, just easily discouraged.
Okay.
So
I have a ton in C, and my Chiron's in F though. I've got mine's 7, 3, 4.
That is interesting. So you see, so if I were to look at your chart, even without looking at where your Chiron is, just by following, where your sun, moon, rising, and just following the, a thread, it will lead to, having, issues with that fixed energy that just have like cardinal starting, but don't like having the structured, which is why you gravitate toward Andrea because of her earth energy, right? Actually, that it's more sustainable.
That was Tom's. That was actually Tom's. I'm like 4, 5, 5.
In what?
Cardinal
Yeah.
fixed mutable.
Okay.
And then my Chiron is also fixed. Yeah. Is your Chiron
Okay.
fixed, Andrea?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if it's because the Chiron moves so slowly, what I was noticing. And so it stays like it's in that same planet for a while too.
Well, Chiron, the thing is that it has a very different orbit. Like with planets, we know when they're going to change signs. It's very mathematical. It has a degree, it has a science behind it. Chiron, on the other hand, it can spend a year or 2 years. Usually the average is 2 years, but this time right now it's in Aries, and it's going to be in Aries for a while. Like it's going to be in Aries for a few years, which is highly unusual. But here's the interesting part, because it is the wounded healer, there is something on a collective level that we have to heal. And what is that something? Assertiveness, leading, starting new projects, healing the wound around that. Because Chiron in Aries is spending so much time to really like let us do the work in that area. Whereas through other signs, it's just, spends two years and the minimum a year. But it's still like, okay, you guys don't need much work here, but as on a collective level, we do in Aries. So it's very interesting that it's going to be in Aries for a while. And if you look at your chart, it orbits right in between Saturn and Uranus. So you're going to find it, either on an opposition, but it's going to be right in between those two planets. So it's very interesting that it serves to like as a bridge in between the two, because Saturn is about old school and tradition, and Uranus is about freedom, innovation, the future, new technology. So they couldn't be more different, those two. And Saturn is just right below Uranus. And then when you have Chiron in between, it serves as the bridge, like how healing what you have to heal is going to help you with your Saturn, which is your life lesson. And it's going to help you with the future, that is Uranus. So I find it highly interesting. And
that makes sense, right? Because like Saturn would be your past, Uranus would be your future, and Chiron is what is not hindering you, but what you got in your past to get to your future. So it could be something that needs healed or an obstacle or whatever that is, but that's the thing that bridges the two. That makes sense, because you won't get to your full potential unless you like understand what that is. Oh, interesting. And mine is like only at 1 degree, so it's like right at the whatever that line across is.
Ascendant. right on your ascendant. And also, like, going back to your question, Andrea, it's every 50 years, we have a Chiron return. What that means is that every 50 years, when we turn 50, Chiron goes back to the same place it was when we were born. So cool. It's a lot of information for us to start working towards, our healing, because then when we turn 50, things will be easier if you have been working on yourself, on your personal growth and self-development. But if you have been postponing it and then procrastinated about it, then you're going to have a harder time on your Chiron return.
And that's when you buy the sports car or get a new wife or
life crisis, right? Well, yeah, because isn't Saturn return is like in your 20s, right?
Well,
and then, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then your Chiron is like after that, and then you don't make it to your other one, I guess, because that would be
you might.
No, well, the one that you're talking about, Nicole, that's just Uranus opposition. That is the so-called midlife crisis. But yes, we have our Saturn return in late 20s, between 28 and 30s. And then we have our Chiron return at 50. And then we have our second Saturn return between 58 and 60. And the one that you may not make it to is your third Chiron, your third Saturn return when you're 90. But yes, and the thing is that, every single transit prepares you for the following one, prepares you for the next step. So Chiron, when you're 50, that's why it's so important. People, oh my God, I'm turning 50, like it's such a big deal. It's such a big, birthday when you turn 50. And of course it is, there's so much, to unwrap there. And it's because Chiron is behind the scenes unknowingly for a lot of people, that don't follow astrology. So I am a highly believer of Chiron and working with Chiron in your chart because it has a lot of potential. And it just helps you to kind of like see where your a wound is, transits, you can work with them. Other things in your life you can work, but your wound is just something that you have to like nurture and heal, and clean it. So I'm gonna go through the signs, quickly. I'm gonna run it through the signs. So Chiron Aries, right? If you have Chiron in Aries, there's a wound about being assertive. You're afraid to take action. For instance, if your Chiron is in the 7th house, then that is the house of relationships. You are afraid of taking the first step. And when it comes to relationships, you're afraid of like putting yourself out there when in relationships. Like that's the guy that will not ask a girl out on a date because it's just so petrified, right? And it's like, what's the big deal? She says no, you move on. Not that easy for a person that has other wound there. There's a wound about being rejected in the past, so it's about being assertive and taking action and putting yourself out there. If you have a Chiron in Taurus, there is a wound about being self-sufficient, or that you can have prosperity in the area of life, where your Chiron is. Taurus is about security and stability, and it's a money sign too. So it's that's why it correlates to being self-sufficient. If your Chiron is in Gemini, there is a wound about opening up to the world. There is a wound about curiosity. It's a wound about being fearful about exploring and how you present yourself. If your Chiron is in Cancer, then there is a wound around emotions. Maybe as a child, you were not allowed to express your emotions. Maybe, you were mocked by them, or you were just simply told to repress them. Also, because it's Cancer and the moon rules Cancer, it's when you have Chiron in Cancer, there's a correlation to having a wound around the mother. Whether it is a figure mother, or it could have been a grandmother, it could have been your own biological mother, but there is a wound around the mother. If your Chiron is in Leo, there is a wound around self-expression, about being spontaneous and joyful. It's like feeling and thinking that you are not allowed to have fun, that it's, that you're not allowed to do creative projects just for the sake of. So it can be sometimes like challenging. If your wound is in Virgo, there is a wound around being of service, of helping others, because maybe in the past, as a child, you were used too much, or like a simple example could be, you were very efficient in doing your homework, and people would just talk to you just to give you for the notes, right?
Wow.
So you feel used, oh, people really don't want to talk to me. People don't really want to be friends with me, and they just want my notes or my homework. So there's a wound up around being of service because you have felt used in the past. So it's about now bringing the awareness. That's why I love astrology so much, because it's a map to help bring awareness into who we are and where our blind spots are, because the only way of healing something is if we have awareness. So by seeing how, oh man, in the past I was used, but that doesn't mean I cannot help other people now willingly. So now then you can be of service to others, and now then you can help other people. So it's and then it's so much easier to create value for others, and not being afraid of feeling criticized or unappreciated, because of course when you're feeling used, you don't feel appreciated. But when you're creating value and service for others willingly in a new lens through new eyes, then yes, it's a different story. If your Chiron is in Libra, there is a wound about relationships. There is a wound about justice, what's fair. These are people that have had a lot of like a conflict in their life because they're just, it hasn't been fair, or people that there's no equality. So, you know, in a work environment, could be, you know, a person that does a lot of the project, but another person takes credit. So there's no equality. There's it's fairness. It's a big issue. Libra is the scales, justice.
Yeah.
So, and if your Chiron is in Scorpio, there is a wound about feeling powerless, about lack of control, because this is, you know, powerless is, it's all related to Scorpio, Pluto in a wound way. You know, Pluto represents power when you're standing in your power in a good way. But when your wound is there, then you feel like you have no control and can feel a little bit like a victim. So gotta be careful with having victim mentality, because for sure at some point in your life you in fact were powerless, you know, especially when we are children, when we are a child, you know, that happens. But at some point in your life you gotta take back your power and work, you know, with what you have. Like, I understand if you are in a very traditional city or state, and you live in a like a very conservative area, and you are different, and you have your wound in Scorpio, and you want to feel and you want to stand in your power, well then move, right? You're not a tree.
Yeah.
It's just that easy, right?
But
Could
that's
be.
what you but
Yeah.
you gotta work, you know, on yourself to give you the strength and the power, you know, like, and working in on your power. It's, for some people, you know, our wounds are so personal to each one of us. So of course our wound is going to feel like, what? Oh my goodness, you know, like, so like for me, my wound is in Gemini in the 5th house, you know, like putting myself out there is like, you know, it's not that easy. As for somebody else, it's like, what are you talking about? Just go up in there and just, you know, make a video, whatever, right? But it's not that easy. So I get it. I have no problem standing in my power. So I know how it's easier for me to say that, as for somebody else, it wouldn't be. But that's the beauty of learning, that yes, that you are allowed. And that's where EFT tapping, you know, comes into place. Hypnotherapy for brain reprogramming comes into place, because Chiron is, your wound is so like deeply rooted that you have to literally reprogram your brain, you know, to kind of like tell yourself like, no, like I can move, I can stand in my power. It is safe for me to stand in my power.
Okay.
So yeah.
So I have a question. Mine is Taurus in the 4th house.
Mm-hmm.
What does that say?
So in the 4th house, it is about family. So there was a wound about, is your family of origin? So there was a wound about your family of origin. Maybe it wasn't like a stable environment. Maybe there were, you know, issues with the mother, because the 4th house is related to the mother. The 4th house is ruled by the moon. and that's
Yeah.
a mother house. So there is one about that, and in Taurus too, like there is a one about not feeling valued in your home. A Taurus is about values and not feeling worthy at times, so maybe you were not appreciated in your home environment on an early age.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
It's
yeah.
interesting.
Right?
Well, I mean, so my sister would say some lies to get me in trouble when we were kids. I'm the older one, she's the younger one, and they would believe her and not me. And when I was 17 and um, I was in university and wanted to move out, my mom, she's like, all those years we should have believed you. Yeah. So that story, like that moment was kind of brought up when you said that. Because I would get frustrated, so frustrated when they wouldn't believe me. Like I'd just get so mad. Um, and as like the Sag and that honesty thing is just so ingrained. And I'm, the honest, my mom would say I'm honest to a fault, like, cause I'm too blunt. um, but yeah, that definitely resonates. And so then how do you heal something like that? I mean, I feel like it's my mission with my daughter to have a good relationship with her. And as she grows up, that heals for me, with maintaining a good relationship with her. What are your thoughts on that?
A lot of forgiveness work. A lot of forgiveness work, because it's about forgiving, your parents and forgiving yourself too, because there's a lot of too, like, oh, for getting upset, or for forgiveness for how you, if you did something afterwards because you were so upset and then you got in trouble, so forgiveness, it's a great uh a great solution, just to help out with your wounds, and in this case, and like because it's these are childhood wounds too. It's, you are at the mercy of others. Well, so it's a lot of forgiveness work, and my favorite for forgiveness is tapping. um and I think tapping in it works better, for me at least, I think, than just writing it down, just writing it down and
Yeah.
repeating it. Yes, it helps, but it's there's still some resistance, or there's still some charge. So I think tapping releases that charge.
Yeah. I also have done a lot of Ho'onoponopono,
Yes.
which is all about forgiveness. I know I have more to do, and it's something that I consistently work on with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Andrea, you have Taurus in the first house, right?
Yeah.
And what's that? What's the first house?
So the first house is in it's about the body, the personality, how you the face that you show to the world too, how you come off, how you express yourself to others. But here's the thing, with the first house, you gotta see the position where it's at. Andrea mentioned that it's right next to her ascending line, and that is a very different position that just having it, further away from it. Why it's a different flavor? Because anything that it's next to that line, it represents the body. Then there is an affliction, a wound in the body.
Mm.
So the first house doesn't necessarily mean that you have like a health condition, but it could be, if it's, depending how far it is from the ascending line, from your rising line. So that it's the difference. So, and it's also a different flavor if you have Chiron in the first house next to that line, the ascending line, as to having it in the 12th house next to that line. It's even though it's right
Yeah.
next to it, it's
Yeah.
different.
Mine's at 1 degree.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that 1 degree in Taurus. And so that it's about Taurus, it's about, your throat, the neck, shoulders. That's what it rules. So that's something that we'll look into. That's something that we will, would ask, hey, do you have any issues, any wounds around, like any health conditions that are in this area of the body? Because that's what Taurus represent. Let's say she would be Leo rising with that same position of Chiron. I would say, hey, do you have any back issues or issues in your heart? Why? Because Leo represents, the upper back and your heart. So you see how it flavors it differently depending on what sign and how far away from the line it is. So it's so yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's so interesting.
What's the sixth house again?
The sixth house is health, work, routines, service, daily habits.
Oh, interesting. Because Tom and Sarah both have theirs in the sixth house, but Tom's is Taurus and Sarah's is Capricorn.
Two different flavors.
Yeah. And so Taurus
11th house.
Taurus would be that is it's not family. Is Taurus the family wound?
No, that's the fourth house. So
Yeah.
that's for you in the fourth house. But Taurus is about a self. It's about value, feeling value, not being value, and how you can sustain yourself in the world.
Okay. So if it's in the sixth house, so Taurus in the sixth would be about habits to help sustain yourself in the world.
Well, habits too, but also it's about, being self-sufficient, how self-sufficient you can be, how self-sufficient about, or having prosperity through your work, or finding prosperity through your daily habits. Or also like there's a wound, it's a work related house too. So there's a wound around your work and what you're doing. So and sometimes it's better to look at the chart as a whole just to give a specific answer, because I need to see the whole chart for very specific questions, but that is just at a glance without looking at the chart.
Yeah. Okay, so then a Capricorn in the sixth, what's the kind of general flavor of that wound, I guess?
So with Capricorn, there's a one around achieving your potential.
Oh.
So there is a one around achieving potential where in the sixth house. So the sixth house is about work. It's about but your daily work, not your career passion, which is different. There's a one about your daily habits. There's a one about being of service and having organization in your life. There's a one about being like more, in a way, reliable too.
Okay.
So going back to, we talked about Scorpio. So Sagittarius, if your Chiron is in Sagittarius, there is a one about meaning and purpose. So it's difficult to find purpose in the area of life where your Chiron is, So, if your Chiron is in your fifth house and you have it in Sagittarius, you don't find meaning and purpose, of having children. That's something, that can happen. Some people are so against it. Some people are just like, yeah, it's not for me. But some others just go on and on and on and on and on and on about people that have children, it's like almost a war against people that have children. And it's because they don't find meaning and purpose of having children. But because there's so many people that don't have children and just like, yeah, no, for me, and move on. Yeah, it makes me happy, good. But these people there's just no meaning and purpose. Or if it is in the fourth house, there's no meaning and purpose when it comes to like having having a family. Maybe they just don't care about, they don't care about just having, getting married, setting foundations, family foundations. They're just, they're fine with traveling the world, being a nomad. So yeah, and then Capricorn, we talked about Capricorn, which is about your, your potential. There's a one around your potential. And then Aquarius. if your Chiron is in Aquarius, then you have a wound about not fitting in. There's a one about, you know, being in a crowd and being different, because your wound will make you want to like just blend in because you so desperately want to fit in. But the joy in this and the key to heal it is to being okay with not fitting in. So, and where, you know, you may feel like an outsider, where in the area of life where your Chiron is, you know, you may feel like an outsider. And, you know, if it's in the 11th house around your friends, in the 10th house, you know, in your career. So you may feel like an outsider in anywhere Chiron is in your chart. So, and that you cannot fit in.
I feel like anybody going through a transition in a relationship, in or out, in a job, in or out, anybody questioning life needs to know about this, you know, or where they should move or like next steps. It seems like something so vital for people to just have a handle on so that they're not flailing around or in question of, you know, of what's going on. It seems so important.
Yes, it is. And last but not least, Pisces. If your wound is in Pisces, there is a wound about spirituality. There is a one about disconnection, feeling lost, confused, like cut off, like from God. And I'm not talking about religion. I'm just talking about feeling cut off and in a way wanting to have a connection, but having difficulty having that connection. Because maybe, you know, in the past, you know, Pisces is, you know, also represents past lives. In the past you may have been like a priest, you know, during the Inquisition, and then you find out that, oh my God, it's bogus, right? So then this life you have a wound around healing and spirituality, and in a healthy way, you know, or practicing being spiritual, not religious, which is two different things. So there is a one about being disconnected from yourself and from others, just being disconnected from the world. Why? Because Pisces rules the subconscious, you know, the other world, you know, the invisible world. So you're being disconnected and you feel like literally a fish out of the water, because that's what Pisces is.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow.
So,
That's it.
Leaves you with now what?
I know. I feel like now is the North Node conversation, North Node, South Node, because that's so much about like where you're going, where you've been. Have we talked about nodes yet? We haven't, have we?
We're gonna talk about that next.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so if anybody wants to get more information, Lucia Robello you can get a one-on-one session with her at thesparklewithin.com. And I just think this is so essential for people to know, you know, like know what your issues are and how to more powerfully deal with it and kind of where you fit in. It's such good information. So thank you, Lucia. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
I'm Nicole Donnelly, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.